Hello and welcome to a new episode of EU Decoded, the podcast from the EPP Group in the European Parliament, where we break down the biggest issues on the EU's policy agenda. Another plenary session in Strasbourg is behind us, and one of the key topics this week was the European Commission's new internal security strategy. For some time, the EPP Group has been advocating for a strong European response to growing security challenges. MEP Thomas Tobe welcomed the Commission's strategy, calling it a clear signal to EU citizens safety must be the EU's top priority.
We welcome that the Commission is now taking crucial steps, because this will be needed now to make Europe safe, but also safe for future generations. The new internal security strategy sends a clear signal that Europe will defend itself against threats, foreign and domestic. And it's also a clear signal to EU citizens that safety needs to be a top priority.
Crime doesn't stop at borders, and that's why the EPP Group is calling for a European Security Pact. A unified response is the only way to tackle today's complex security threats. MEP Jeroen Lenaers laid out key steps to make sure Europe can effectively fight crime.
Criminal networks operate across borders, so must our response. Better cooperation and enforcement, effective communication between member states, transforming Europol into an operational agency alongside stronger mandates for Eurojust and Frontex. All this is vital to addressing security challenges.
As the EU strengthens the mandates of Frontex, Eurojust and Europol, it also needs to make sure police and other agencies keep up with technological advances. That's the only way to tackle emerging hybrid and digital threats. The EU must be a strong, reliable global partner, fighting domestic and international crime and terrorism. This has also been an important week for European legislation on industry. When it comes to the challenges facing car manufacturers, the European Commission has proposed changes to the rules on CO2 emissions standards for new cars and vans. The idea? More flexibility by letting manufacturers meet their CO2 targets over a 3-year period instead of being assessed every year. Without this change, European carmakers could face €15 billion in fines, putting even more jobs at risk. And that's why the EPP Group wants to fast-track this proposal in Parliament, and it's also pushing for something bigger: true technological neutrality.
Well, this is the first step in the direction, the flexibility which is needed right now, but it's in a way a low-hanging fruit. Of course, the overall ambition is still there for the 2035, but we as EPP have always asked for a technology-neutral approach. So we want to have a second step. We want to have flexibility, not only on the fines, but even on the possibilities to reach the goals. So we need different kinds of fuels, e-fuels, biofuels.
The European steel industry also got a much-needed boost with the Commission's Steel and Metal Action Plan. The plan acknowledges the industry's vital role in protecting the EU's economic security and social stability. Right now, Europe is the only region in the world where the steel industry is shrinking, and that needs to change fast.
Wir haben als EVP jetzt mehr als 1,5 Jahre dafür gekämpft, weil die europäische und deutsche Stahlindustrie...
MEP Dennis Radke calls the Commission's plan long overdue and warns that Europe's steel industry is under massive pressure due to overcapacity and high energy costs. His message is clear: we must act now to safeguard high-quality, future-proof jobs.
Wir wollen Resilienz und wir wollen den Erhalt von gut bezahlten und mitbestimmten Arbeitsplätzen in Europa.
Well, more good news for European businesses came this week as Parliament voted on the so-called Stop the Clock proposal, an initiative supported by the EPP Group. And this proposal would pause the enforcement of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive in their current form, allowing time to simplify the rules. Simply put, Europe needs less bureaucracy and more growth. The EPP Group is ready to deliver, starting with giving companies the clarity and breathing room they need. As much as we must prepare our economy and industry for the challenges they are facing, we must not lose sight of the EU's overall preparedness for unexpected events. The EU must be prepared for any future crises, be it attacks on critical infrastructure, supply chain disruptions, pandemics, cyber attacks, or potential wars. The EPP Group calls for stronger cooperation and coordination between EU member states on civil and defence preparedness. Europe needs a solid EU-wide risk assessment system, one that evaluates threats based on their likelihood and impact, allowing for a unified, strategic response. The recently published EU Preparedness Union Strategy marks a vital step towards enhancing Europe's resilience, security and stability.
Ich möchte 3 Building Blocks sozusagen einmal rausgreifen, die neben allen anderen natürlich genauso wichtig sind, aber zur Grundbedingung.
MEP Lena Dupont highlighted 3 key pillars of the recently presented preparedness strategy. First, ensuring quick and effective information sharing among all relevant stakeholders. Secondly, educating citizens through public debate without causing alarm so they can handle crises and become more resilient. And finally, strengthening civil-military cooperation by giving it the space to be tested and put into practice. Now, to wrap up this episode, we must talk about the new trade tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. The EPP Group continues to call for cool heads to prevail and maintain unity, ensuring that the European response matches the US tariffs while remaining compatible with WTO rules to uphold global trade standards. As the American president proclaimed Liberation Day, EPP Group Chairman Manfred Weber called it instead a resentment day.
Trump's tariffs are not about fair trade, they are about fear of trade, and fear is always a bad guide. We do not follow this logic. We, as EPP, say yes to the US relationship as the most successful partnership in the world. We know about the numbers. 5 billion of goods and services cross the Atlantic every single day. 16 million jobs are defending on both sides of the Atlantic on this win-win partnership. The 2nd of April is not a liberation day. It's a resentment day.
Well, given all the circumstances, it's no secret. Europe is facing big economic challenges. From defence to digitalisation to climate protection, we need major investments. And that's why activation of private capital is becoming increasingly more important, says MEP Markus Ferber. If we want a strong, efficient European economy, we need strong, efficient European capital markets.
Wenn wir eine leistungsfähige europäische Wirtschaft wollen, dann brauchen wir auch leistungsfähige europäische Kapitalmärkte.
MEP Markus Ferber pointed out that European companies keep turning to New York and London when they need to raise money on capital markets. This must change, he says. We need a real savings and investment union, not just to secure our prosperity, but for geostrategic reasons too. That's why the EPP Group has been pushing for swift action to integrate European financial markets. In short, we don't want to see European billions in savings to continue flowing to the USA. And that's all for this episode of EU Decoded. Thanks for listening, and make sure to follow the EPP Group on social media for all news and developments. So until next time, goodbye.